Hello, today I'll be doing a discography review. This time it'll be for the band Fear Factory, a band that I'll be seeing live with Static X in a couple weeks. I also have VIP for Static X. Definitely really looking forward to that show, but yeah, let's go ahead and dive into this. Of course, it all started with this album right here, Soul of a New Machine. An interesting mix of industrial metal and death metal. It was also produced by Colin Richardson. This album definitely has a really raw, heavy sound. But yeah, Colin Richardson, he has worked with other bands that I do enjoy. Just to name a few, Machine Head, Bull for a Valentine, and Trivium. But yeah, all around, pretty solid album. I wouldn't rank it as their best, but still overall, pretty solid debut. Some of my favorites on here, Martyr, Scapegoat, which might be my favorite song on the album. Rhythmically, I really dig that song, along with, of course, the heaviness. Crash Test is also pretty good. WOE is another song that I enjoy. On the shorter side, but still fairly solid song. Suffrage has always been one of my personal favorites on the album. The intro / buildup of that song kind of reminds me of the intro to a song that would come out years later, 97 if I got the year right. That song being Loco by Cold Chamber. But yeah, the buildup of this song kind of reminds me of the buildup in Loco. I'm not sure if I'm the only one that hears this, but either way, Suffrage, definitely a really killer song. Self-Immolation and Big God / Rape Souls are a couple other songs that I enjoy off the album. But yeah, this is an album that would probably benefit from some trimming, in my opinion. Shave off maybe 2 or 3 or maybe 4 songs off of here, and I think the album would definitely be stronger. But overall, a good debut album. I wouldn't say it's great or amazing by any means. I wouldn't go that far, but still overall, fairly good album, fairly good debut. The next one they would put out, Fear is the Mind Killer, which is a remix EP. But then they would come out with their big album, Demanufacture. And yeah, this is an album that definitely did very well for them. They continued to work with Colin Richardson with this one, and this album definitely has some of the band's best work, such as the first 4 songs, the title track, Self-Bias Resistor, Zero Signal, which was in Mortal Kombat, the original Mortal Kombat movie from '95. And then you have the song Replica, which was the song that got me hooked onto this band. Definitely a really killer song. You move towards the second half, and you still get some pretty solid work, like HK, Hunter Killer, and Piss Christ. Body Hammer is also pretty good, but yeah, definitely a 90s metal classic. It's definitely up there with other 90s metal greats, like Vulgar Display of Power, or Cleansing, or Burn My Eyes. But yeah, definitely all around really great album. Definitely one of the band's best. And also on top of that, the production was definitely a step up from the debut. The next they would put out this remix album called Remanufacture. So when it comes to remix albums for me, not really something that I'm really into all that much. There's really only 2 or 3 remix albums that I'm into. This is one of them. But yeah, the title track and Genetic Blueprint are probably my favorites off of here. Overall, pretty cool, pretty interesting remix album. But then they would put out the album that commercially did very well for the band. Maybe their most commercially successful, if I remember correctly, and that album is Obsolete. You have the cover of Cars, which was a song that did very well for the band. You have other great songs like Shock and Edge Crusher being probably one of my favorite songs from the band. Descent is also pretty good. I really dig Burton's singing in that song. Same with the song Resurrection, which was another single off the album. Freedom or Fire, I think, is maybe one of their most underrated songs, and also maybe one of my favorite Fear Factory songs. Yeah, all around, really great Fear Factory album. Something you do notice with this album, at least compared to the previous 2 albums, is that this album's a bit more accessible, but of course it still maintains the heaviness that you want from Fear Factory, and still in general feels like Fear Factory. All around, again, really great album. I also have this here. This is a sampler CD, and I got this off of eBay from a seller that was overseas. But what I did not know was that this was going to be signed. There were no pictures that that it implied that this was going to be signed. There was nothing said in the description or anything like that, so this was definitely a pleasant surprise when I finally opened this when it came in the mail. Because I think I bought this for like, I don't know, $9 or $10 or something like that. So yeah, definitely a steal for sure. The next, we'll be moving to the final album in a trilogy, Digimortal. Final installment in this concept that they've been doing since Demanufacture. But yeah, this album commercially and reception-wise didn't do as well as Obsolete. On top of that, there were some fans that were not really on board with the nu metal isms of this album. But yeah, this is actually one of my favorites from the band. I wouldn't put it at the top, but still, overall, another pretty good album from Fear Factory, in my opinion. But the album opens up with What Will Become, which is maybe one of the heaviest songs on here. But yeah, definitely one of my favorites on the album. The title track's also pretty good. I definitely dig Burton's clean vocals in that one. But you have the big song on here, Linchpin, which, if I remember correctly, is one of their most played songs. Maybe their most played on, I want to say Spotify. I could be wrong, but either way, I don't use Spotify. But Linchpin, pretty killer song. Definitely one of their big anthems. You also have Invisible Wounds, Dark Bodies, which is more on the more melodic side. Another pretty good song. They bring back the heaviness with Acres of Skin, which is could maybe make the argument that's maybe the heaviest song on here, but either way, pretty killer song. But then you have the song Back the Fuck Up, which features the rapper Be Real, if I got the name right. And yeah, you can maybe make the argument that this song has maybe not aged all that well, or you can tell that it's definitely of its time, but I'll admit I do kind of like that song a little bit. Her Conveyor is also pretty good, but yeah, overall, again, another pretty good album from Fear Factory in my opinion. May not be for every Fear Factory fan, but I personally dig it. But this would be their final album with Dino until he would come back later in the discography, and we will get to that later, of course. But they would also put out Concrete, and the material on this was recorded back in 1991, if I got the year right, but this didn't come out until, again, 2002. But this was produced by Ross Robinson, who went on to work with Korn and Slipknot, just to name a couple bands. But the band would also put out Hate Files, which is a compilation. But their next studio album would be Archetype, first album without Dino. And honestly, kind of an underrated album. I mean, this album is just raw, heavy, and really in your face, especially certain riffs in the album, like in Cyber Waste. But I mean, Archetype, the title track, is definitely the big song on here, but you have some other really great songs on here. Definitely an album that definitely has its share of songs that I feel are somewhat underrated / overlooked. Slave Labor, it's one of the fan favorites on the album, a really killer album opener. Act of God's also pretty good. You also have the song Corporate Cloning, which has to be up there as one of their most underrated songs, along with Freedom or Fire. But yeah, Corporate Cloning is definitely another really killer song. You also have the song Bite the Hand That Bleeds, which is you can maybe make the argument that's maybe the most accessible song on here. I believe this was in the soundtrack of something. It might have been Saw, I can't remember, but I could be wrong. But either way, Bite the Hand That Bleeds, definitely a really good song. Human Shields is also pretty good. There's maybe 2 or 3 skippable songs on here, but besides that, overall, I think it's a pretty strong Fear Factory album, and if you somehow haven't heard it, definitely check it out. But next they would put out, in my opinion, their weakest album, and that is Transgression. Honestly, the only song that I return to off this album is the title track. I mean, the rest of the album for me is either average or just straight up forgettable. I mean, there isn't really anything on here that I would say is straight up god-awful by any means. I wouldn't go that far, but I think most fans would definitely agree with me that this is easily their weakest, or at least one of their weakest. If I remember correctly, it's been said that this album was hurried due to demands by the band's label at the time. And yeah, you can definitely hear it, but I mean, top track's pretty good, but the rest of the album is kind of for me. And on top of that, the production is also not that great. Definitely a step down from the production from Archetype. But The band would come back with Mechanize, and which also sees the return of Dino Cazares. And yeah, this is definitely a strong return. Definitely a really great album. Definitely one of the best, especially when it comes to their more modern era. I mean, so many great songs on here, like Power Shifter, which that's a song that definitely is a good reminder of how great they are with riff work. Final Exit, definitely an epic album closer. That's definitely one of the highlights off the album. Oxidizer is also pretty good. Fear Campaign is also solid. Industrial Discipline, another favorite of mine on the album. But yeah, all around, really great Fear Factory album. Definitely a step up from Transgression. Then they would put out, in my opinion, one of their weaker albums, but not bad. That album is The Industrialist. This album to me just kind of feels like more of the same. There's just not, and also on top of that, there's not a whole lot here that really stands out, especially when you move towards the second half. But there wasn't really anything that I would say is bad on here. But for me, again, definitely one of their weaker albums. But still, at the end of the day, I'd say at least a good album, but not great or amazing. But some of my favorites on here: Recharger, New Messiah, Fires of Faith is also pretty good. But this is an album for me that I just do not return to as much as some of their other albums. But still, overall, a solid album. But then they would really step things up with this album right here, Genexus. So with my copy of the album, I have a signed CD booklet. Definitely really cool. But yeah, this album is definitely really awesome. I might like this album more than Mechanize. I mean, my mind on that could change at any time. It might depend on the day for me, but this album is definitely excellent. And I mean, some of my favorites on here: Autonomous, Combat System, Dielectric is definitely one of my favorites when it comes to the singles off of here. Church of Execution, I think, is maybe the big underrated song on here. I really like that one. Regenerate's also pretty good and catchy. Expiration Date really shows the sci-fi side of the band, and all around definitely a pretty interesting song. Definitely a pretty interesting album closer. The title track is a song that I've grown to like much more with time. I mean, I've always liked it, but I'd say I definitely enjoy it much more now. But yeah, title track also pretty good. But yeah, overall, pretty good album from Fear Factory. But then they would release or come back with this album, Aggression Continuum. And I'm still not sure if I like this album more than Genexus. I might like Genexus more. I'm still not sure, but this album definitely has its share of strong songs, but this would be their final album with Burton C. Bell, unfortunately. But some of my favorites on here: Recode, which is one of the bigger songs on here. Definitely really dig that song. It was released as a single. The title track is also pretty good. Purity, at times in that song kind of reminds me of Digimortal a little bit. I really like that song. Cognitive Dissonance is a song that I think is kind of slept on a little bit. I really like that song. I think that's definitely one of the best songs on here. But yeah, there's maybe one or two songs on here that I think are somewhat skippable, or you could maybe say, dare I say, filler. But still, overall, another pretty good album from Fear Factory. I wouldn't rank it as one of the band's best, but still, fairly solid album. But yeah, again, as I mentioned earlier, it would be the final album with Burton C. Bell. But yeah, the band would also release Recoded, which is a remix album, and I'll go ahead and be honest, this thing does nothing for me. I mean, I wouldn't say that it's straight up god-awful or terrible or anything like that, but there's just nothing really here that I find myself returning to all that much. I mean, Disobey, which is the remix of Disruptor, I don't mind that one, but again, there's just not a whole lot here that really sticks with me all that much. I gave it a couple listens, and it's just not really doing a whole lot for me. But again, not terrible, not god-awful, but kind of for me. But yeah, that is my review of the Fear Factory discography. I guess since while we're here, I guess we can discuss the future of Fear Factory, mainly with the singer situation. I do find it interesting. I mean, I don't know when this tour starts, but I'm going to see them on in early March, and I find it interesting that they haven't announced the new singer yet or dropped any new material with the new singer yet before the tour. I'm not sure what's going on. The fact that again that they haven't announced the new singer yet, it does have me a little bit nervous for the show that I'm going to, but I mean, of course, I'll give the new singer a chance and all that. I mean, of course, I'm going to have no choice when I see the band live, but all I know is that no one sounds like Burton C. Bell, so definitely big shoes to fill. But again, I'll definitely give the new singer a chance, but I will admit I am a tad nervous, though. But either way, again, that was my review for the discography. Let me know your thoughts on my review. Do you agree or disagree with some of my thoughts and opinions on these albums? Let me know some of your favorite or least favorite songs or albums from this band and all the good stuff. But anyways, thanks for watching. Please leave a comment and a like, subscribe. Have a nice day, and take care.